Hey, let's start today with a little content warning. I'm going to be talking in this video about topics like murder, so if that's too much for you, you might want to give this one a skip, but it is an important video, so I hope you stick around. Let's dive right into the murder, though. I'm so sorry. Several different true crime outlets, like Dateline, have covered the story of Jill Halliburton Sue, a woman who was brutally murdered back in 2014. Her husband was at work when he checked their home's security cameras and saw a masked man in the house. He called their 20-year-old son to ask if it was him playing a prank. The son said that he wasn't even at home, but that he would go check things out. So he went over to the house, and when he got there, he apparently found his mother dead in the bathtub with the water running. He called 911, and I'm going to play you the call. It is important to the video, but again, just a warning, it is very upsetting.
What is your emergency?
My mom killed herself.
Okay.
I found her dead in the bathtub. I will.
What is your name?
My name is
Yes.
Justin Sue. What's wrong with my mom?
Okay. Stay on the phone with me, Justin. Are you with her right now?
How old is she?
No.
Cut herself. She looks so cut up. She just stabbed herself and threw herself in the bathtub. I found her drowning.
Breathing?
No, she's not. I tried to. She's not. Oh my God. She's cut all over herself. Like on her neck. You know what? I don't know. There's a murder. I think. Her hands are tied.
Her hands are tied? When did you find her?
I'm so scared right now.
Okay.
And everything. You know what? Oh my God. I hope our house is gonna run us through. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think anyone's here, but gotta be left already. But someone.
Yeah, no one else is there?
Yeah. No, she really committed suicide. I'm sorry today. I just thought I was good, but someone scared her. Someone scared my mom. I'm sorry. Oh my God.
So as you heard, her son initially said that his mom killed herself before realizing that she had been bound with a belt and stabbed many times. The cops ended up pulling him into an interrogation room and keeping him there for 13 hours, convinced that he was their murderer. Why? Well, for starters, why on earth would he have assumed that his mom committed suicide?
You know her ass didn't kill herself.
Yeah.
Okay, so then why would you tell that to 911?
No, I did think she killed herself. I thought she tied herself and tried to drown herself in the tub. Did I say that?
No, that's not what you said. And I'm not gonna tell you what you said. That's your fucking fault. But that's not what you said. This is gonna be a lot of you trying to remember your own fucking lives.
No, it's not, man. Like I said, man.
And that's gonna be a lot harder for you.
I don't know, dude. Once I saw my mom's body, man, I don't know.
You know what it is? You thought you were fucking smarter than everybody else, and now you're trying to remember your own fucking lies, and you're eating it. It's much harder to try to remember your lies.
I'm so stressed right now, man. I'm being.
You should be. You fucked up. Nope, you didn't.
No, I didn't.
Bro, it's obvious you did.
No, I didn't.
So obvious.
No, I didn't.
You did it, and you fucked up trying to.
No, I didn't. I didn't try covering up anything. I didn't try doing anything. I didn't just stage shit. Imagine seeing your mother
I have.
dead
Yeah, I have.
like that.
I've imagined it. Plenty over and over in here. Yeah.
I
would not act not a fucking inkling like you did. You can throw your hands up all you want.
Dude, I didn't do
You
it.
agree with me. You agreed with me earlier.
No, man. I thought I did what was right, man.
They were convinced it was him, but eventually the cops checked the location data on his phone and they realized, yeah, he was nowhere near the scene when his mother was murdered. And they found DNA at the scene that was connected to a man who had previously been convicted multiple times for home invasions and who was eventually convicted of the crime. Now, because I consume way too much true crime content, I have seen this case covered repeatedly. To be fair, it is an interesting case for reasons that I won't bother to go into here, but every time I see it pop up, it infuriates me even more. Is it possible that the son really is guilty? Yes, but how dare those cops assume that they know someone is guilty based purely on the way that they react in the literal seconds in which they are experiencing one of the worst tragedies that can possibly befall a person. He found his mom brutally murdered. When he asked the cop how that cop would have felt finding his mom like that, the cop has the audacity to pretend like he would have reacted in some better way without all of the panic and confusion. This kind of thing comes up a lot in these true crime cases. Cops, prosecutors, and the general public judging someone because they don't react the right way in the worst moments of their life. Not enough emotion or too much emotion or the wrong kind of emotion. And I knew that this was a problem. And I've talked before about similar problems like the body language experts who infest YouTube and true crime genres. But until last week, I had no idea just how big of a problem the idea of judging someone based on 911 calls was. So in that previous video from 2019, I talked about how micro expressions that betray your true emotions, they started as a reasonable hypothesis by a psychologist, but it spun out of control when they started to be used in criminal justice, like a prosecutor admitting on Twitter that she can just tell when someone is lying based on the way their eyes move. It's BS. These days, it's even worse because the supposed expert doesn't even need to be looking at the person to know that they're lying. They can use the supposedly scientific new tool of 911 call analysis to identify when the caller is the killer. Every month, I do a live stream where I answer any questions posed by my patrons, and every month, there's at least one question that sends me down a rabbit hole. So for March, it was this question / more of a comment from Philip. If you haven't already, would you consider doing a segment on Tracy Harpster, who makes a bundle peddling a training program for police on how to identify guilt and deception from the word choice, cadence, and grammar of those calling 911? I read that comment, and then the next thing I knew, 6 hours had passed, the sun had set, and I was full of rage. As always, the transcript that I link below the video will include links that I highly recommend you check out. In this case, the bulk of my information comes from an excellent series of investigative pieces by Brett Murphy at ProPublica. But it is a lot of reading, so I'm going to do my best to give you a summary here. In 2009, a cop named Tracy Harpster from a small town in Ohio that rarely saw a murder published a preliminary study in which he combed through 100 911 calls, half of which had been made by the person who was later convicted of the crime being reported. He did this to identify patterns, coming up with a list of features that he noticed in the guilty calls, like not immediately pleading for help, not demonstrating sufficient urgency, being polite by using words like sorry and thank you, giving extraneous information, or insisting that the victim is dead when their condition isn't necessarily 100% known to the caller. Though Harpster had no scientific training, that kind of analysis is normal and even necessary in science. It's a first step that says, hey, here's a pattern I noticed in this data set. But because the researcher at this point is specifically looking for any data point that stands out, like literally just looking for any anomalies they can find, it's impossible to say that those anomalies will be found in a different or larger data set. For instance, if I have a bag of 100 marbles of different colors, I can reach in, pull out a handful, and record what anomalies I see, like 7 blue marbles and 3 red marbles. That does not give me a definitive answer as to what the rest of the bag contains, but it does give me a hypothesis. If you pull one more marble out of that bag, the hypothesis is it has a 70% chance of being blue. So the next step is to test that hypothesis by reaching back in the bag, grabbing more marbles again and again and again, and seeing if those numbers line up. Harpster never bothered with that crucial second step of actually testing the hypothesis. Other researchers did, with one study in 2020 and another from last year, both finding no correlation between Harpster's list of things to look out for and actual cases of deception. Unfortunately, those studies haven't really made any difference because Harpster's original preliminary analysis had already been shared by the FBI to law enforcement across the country, who immediately started putting it to the test and finding great success at identifying criminals based on their 911 calls. They weren't actually testing the hypothesis, they were assuming the hypothesis was true and using it to pursue and convict people. These successes encouraged Harpster to start charging for 2-day training sessions, paid for by taxpayers, in which he trained investigators on how to use his magical checklist to find and convict people. Investigators quickly realized that because there's no actual scientific backing for this checklist, they would have to sneak it into court cases without actually calling Harpster or trained detectives as expert witnesses. Since, there are rules for what qualifies as expert scientific testimony in court. ProPublica has reams of documents that catch prosecutors doing this red-handed, creating a playbook on how to use Harpster's now debunked pseudoscience in court without subjecting it to expert scrutiny. First, identify law enforcement witnesses who have taken Harpster's course, then tell them how to testify about the guilty indicators by broadly referencing training and experience. As Estevez, the prosecutor in Iowa, put it in an email, have them testify why this 911 call is inconsistent with an innocent caller, consistent with someone with a guilty mind. Next, prime jurors during jury selection and opening arguments about how a normal person should and shouldn't react in an emergency. Give them a transcript of the 911 call and then play the audio. When they hear it, a prosecutor in Louisiana once told Harpster, it will be like a Dr. Phil aha moment. Finally, remind jurors about the indicators during closing arguments. Reinforce all the incriminating sections of the call, another prosecutor wrote. Omissions, lack of emotion, over-emotion, failure to act appropriately. Juries love it. It's easy for them to understand, Harpster once explained to a prosecutor, unlike DNA, which puts them to sleep. Murphy gives in-depth details on several cases of innocent and potentially innocent people whose cases have been overturned, whose lives have been ruined in part thanks to investigators and prosecutors using 911 call analysis to determine guilt before they even consider any other evidence. And in a follow-up article, Murphy describes how his initial investigation came as a genuine shock to judges and defense attorneys who had no idea that they had been encountering abject pseudoscience in the courtroom. While Harpster's system is now well known amongst police and prosecutors, Googling it prior to ProPublica's investigation turned up practically nothing. They purposely hid this technique from the public, supposedly to stop criminals from using it to their advantage, but let's be real, it's also probably to prevent researchers from continuing to point out that this method just doesn't hold up to scientific scrutiny. If this becomes more widely known, then 911 call analysis will go the way of polygraphs, something that cops will use to scare suspects, but which cannot be submitted as scientific evidence in a court of law. And that's why I'm making this video. Please go read those ProPublica pieces and share them far and wide so that more justices, defense attorneys, and innocent victims know that 911 call analysis is just junk science. Hey everybody, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. If you loved the video, please subscribe. And if you think the world could use more videos like this and you happen to have a few bucks laying around, head to patreon.com/Rebecca and join an awesome community of nerds like the people whose names you see on the screen right now. Thanks.